Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on writing the perfect cover letter. My name is Cliff Guerin. I am with the WGU Career and Professional Development Center. I am glad that you are joining us today. We're going to talk about cover letters, of course. And so, first of all, an overview of today's presentation will be to talk about what exactly is a cover letter, how's it used, how do employers look at cover letters, what's the best formatting to use when you're creating a cover letter, and we'll go into paragraph by paragraph to help sort of optimize the space on the page, what the paragraph should be talking about, really how to focus this particular type of document. And then we'll wrap up with a few things to keep in mind and remember, and then we'll open up for any questions that you may have from the presentation. So I'm sure that you all have heard of cover letters. Maybe you have one, maybe you've written one. But when we look at a cover letter used for job searching or for your applications that's out there, a cover letter really is a complement to your resume. So there may be a crossover, and it's perfectly okay to include information from your resume on your cover letter. That's going to make a lot of sense because it's to complement your resume. And so, of course, you may be sharing information between the two documents. So it is a narrative, it is a letter that you want to write and use all the appropriate grammatical rules that you would not use on a resume. Those are two very different documents. We're not going to talk about resumes today, but on a cover letter, you want to make sure that it is a professional document, the spelling is correct, grammar is correct. If you use Grammarly, that app that will allow you to, it will go through your documents to identify areas of better writing, better grammar, spelling. There is a free version. It's a pretty good tool to use. You might use that on your cover letters just to make sure that everything is kind of buttoned down and sharply done. You want to keep your cover letter brief, and that is one page only. The best cover letters that I've seen and the input from employers is that it's not even a whole page. It's brief paragraphs that explain who you are, what you're looking for from this company. So it needs to be tailored to each individual company. Your skill sets to an extent, introducing your qualifications for the position that's being posted from the company. So it's not a generic letter, it's a very specific focused letter that you write. And then your conclusion and maybe follow up. You're not asking for an interview. That's one of the things on a cover letter. We're going to get to that detail in just a minute. So hopefully that possibly will spark some interest. What's he going to say about that? But it does highlight your motivations for applying for that job and the position, and maybe the why are you seeking this particular company? What is it that is you're trying to convince the employer to now look at your resume? So you want to be enthusiastic about why you're approaching this particular company and position. It can showcase your personality a little bit, how you believe that you are a good fit for the culture of the company. You might even look up the company's mission statement or how they talk about themselves. Use some of that information to help inform your interest in the company as well. This is all information that is naturally involved with a cover letter, but it's not on a resume. You can't put it on a resume. It's not appropriate and it's not the right writing style for a resume, but it perfectly fits within the content of a cover letter. So, digging a little deeper, your cover letter can highlight your academic experience. It can highlight your professional experience or transferable skills if you're a career changer. This is a perfect way to explain your sort of your career path into your next step of your career goals and things of that sort. maybe personal qualifications. Don't get very personal. It's not a biography about your life, but if there's something that touches on why you're applying for this particular position or why you chose your degree program that's relevant to the job you're applying to, these are things that can be built into your cover letter. Now, on a job description, the job description may say, as part of some required soft skills, that they want you to be able to communicate in a professional way, both verbally and in writing. So a cover letter can be an example of a writing sample. So you can showcase your ability to write in a professional business way. And again, it tells the employer, and it's really directed to that employer. So it's a lot different um, than just a generic letter. So you do not want to say to whom it may concern. You do not want to say, dear sir or madam. You want to announce it, directly as much as possible to that employer. You may not know their name, but you have the company and you have the position title. So it may be dear hiring manager. At least it's a title that's going to a specific person who holds that position. Again, it gives some descriptive, relevant keywords that's there. That's going to be important to include on your cover letter. And it lets the employer know that you are being proactive. You're taking this extra step. They didn't ask you to do it, but they will typically read a cover letter if you provide one as part of your application process. So, in general, the cover letter, the purpose of it also is to explain to them why, or answer the question, why them and why you? Why are you choosing that particular company? And be sure to include a sentence or a few sentences again on what your knowledge is about that particular company. That's going to get their attention, and it's going to make a really good first impression that you've done your homework on the background of that particular company. And then about you, you want to focus your attention on your qualifications and why you think that you are qualified, or at least you are an aspiring qualified person with your education, if you're a career changer, to that organization. Now, as you might have all heard, that one of the top strategies of job searching and making contact with employers or recruiters is really to make a connection. It's about networking. This can also be a networking tool to be able to introduce yourself to a company or the different companies that you're applying to. So let's look at three ways of how you can make that type of connection. Writing your brand, what do you bring to that particular company that may not be unique, but it's something that is part of who you are. Um, so include that in there. If you're in the IT or the School of Technology and you're getting a degree in IT of some sort, cybersecurity, whatever that may be, I've had students who come from a law enforcement background or military background, and they're getting their degree in cybersecurity. So their brand that they talk about is really the ability to bring an understanding of safety and security and lawfulness now to technology to help with hardening your target, so to speak, with the company. So that might be something to think about. Students who may be in the healthcare industry may talk about how they had an encounter or a family member with a healthcare provider or a nurse, and that really sparked their interest to help other people. So they began to pursue that industry themselves, that profession themselves. That could be the brand that they want to highlight. Do some research, look at the company, find out a little bit more about who they are, how they talk about themselves. Handshake and LinkedIn are excellent sources to do that kind of research. You can also tell them how you came to learn who they are, and again, if there's anything special about that particular company that touches you in some way, include that in your cover letter. I've had people who have had for themselves or family members who had heart problems, and they were applying to, like the American Heart Association, in because they have a business background, they're getting their MBA, and they're looking for a way to give back in a nonprofit organization. So they make that connection with a personal story or look with a personal example that brings them closer to really that emotional connection, which can be powerful. And again, that connection can highlight or underscore their value as far as their career goals, their work ethic, and how they perform in that environment. Could also be a way to make that connection. Now, when we look at the structure of a cover letter and we break it down, this is what we call a business block style. So the business block style obviously starts with your name, your contact information. You can include your LinkedIn URL as part of that section itself. Then the next could be the date that you send it. So you want to make sure that if you do include the date, that it's current with the day that you send the resume, or I'm sorry, the cover letter. And then the next section that is part of the business block is the company's name. If you know the hiring manager, you certainly can include that. Sometimes folks will not include the hiring manager's name, even if they find it, because it might have changed and they just didn't update their contact information or wherever they found that information. So you can certainly put the company name, the address, city and state would be fine. And then in the center where it has that RE and then the job title, that's regarding, what's the kind of the title or the purpose of the cover letter. Then it's going to be that RE job title that's going to be there. That helps to also brand your cover letter to that specific company and that specific job that you're applying to. It helps to take away a sense of making your cover letter too generic. And then you can write in, I typically stay with what's most common, and that's going to be simply Dear Hiring Manager. Then you break it down into your paragraphs or your sections. They don't have to be very long. Like I said before, 3, 4, 5 sentences is perfectly fine. That opening paragraph typically will state what you're applying for, obviously why you're choosing this particular company, how you came to learn about the opening, if that was on Handshake or LinkedIn or Indeed, or you heard it from a friend, whatever the case may be. And then that next paragraph could go into a little bit more about the company, specifically that might intersect your interests, that might touch base with, again, your personality, your values, and how you see that alignment as a really good fit. And then it could blend into going to talk about your skills and why you believe this is a good opportunity for you to use your skill sets, how you match the job description, give some examples of the qualifications, and then your closing or that final paragraph could be something to the effect of, I have included my resume for your consideration. If there are further questions, I would be available to address them however you want to write it in your own words. Most times folks will say, I'm available for to be contacted for any questions or further qualifications, something to that effect. As I said earlier, do not ask for an interview. So that sounds like it's just splitting hairs a little bit. But the very intention of applying to a job is obviously to get the interview, and then you talk, obviously, about how you're a good fit and that goes into the possibility of the hiring process. So when we break it down, there are several layers of this whole thing about applying to a job. Um, so we can talk about that more if you want to discuss it at our Q&A at the end of the presentation. But again, you certainly can use that closing space to let them know that you're available for further discussion of your qualifications. And then sincerely, and then your name. Make sure that the font you use for your name is the same font for the rest of the document. Don't try to find a scripted font or signature type font. Certainly not a picture of your signature. That's not appropriate for these types of documents. Now, when we break it down paragraph by paragraph, there may be certain scenarios or situations that you're in. If you are in your industry but changing the type of job you're doing, if you're a career changer and you're coming from a wholly different industry, then your paragraphs may have a different content or a different feel or tone to them. Your opening paragraph is always going to be the same. It's always going to state, who you are, how you found the job, uh, what um, what you know about the company a little bit, but basically introducing yourself, and then transitioning. If you're a career changer, you might go into now the next paragraph or a few sentences to talk about your academic qualifications. So if you use this with absolutely no experience in the next job, this is a good way to now make that transition to talk about your academic experience. State, Western Governors University, obviously, what you have studied, what specific courses might be relevant to the position, maybe projects that you have, don't go into a lot of detail, but you can mention the projects that would be relevant to give you that hands-on experience that's there. Again, maybe a few courses that you've taken. You don't have to describe the courses, but you can use that to explain how your academics has prepared you for this next step in your career journey. Then the next paragraph or the body paragraph kind of brings it together, connects your skill sets, your coursework, your experiences into that main message that you want to get across for the position. Highlighting again your core values, so to speak, your work ethic to that particular organization. And then the closing and final paragraph, formal closing, can certainly be affirming that you believe this is a good step and that you have something valuable to bring to the company. You have attached your resume for their consideration, and you would be glad to, be contacted at any time for further discussion of those qualifications. Now, because we are now in the era of AI, a lot of folks will say, "Well, can I just do this and get GP or Chat GPT to write my cover letter for me?" And the answer is yes, you can actually. Now, there is a caveat to that yes. You can use Chat GPT to write a cover letter, but only for the purpose of it to be a launching off point that you now go back into that cover letter and you make it your own. So don't just have Chat GPT write a 3 brief cover letter on, you know, um, information technology analyst, or something, however you want to instruct Chat GPT to do that, or any other AI tool that's going to write something. You need to go back and you need to make it your own. So as much as technology is advancing to help us in these ways, there's also technology from employers, and we're hearing this more and more today, that there's a way that they can tell that it was Chat GPT or some other AI written document, And if they can't tell that it's actually you have gone in there to make it a little bit more personalized, that could be a red flag, and you don't want anything to kind of kick you out of the process. We're learning more about this, so there could be questions that relate to the use of an AI tool like this. And as we learn more and more, then we bring that information and try to include it into our presentations. So again, just as kind of a confirmation, you can use these to write your cover letter, but then you want to go back and personalize it and make it your own so it sounds like it's from you and not just, you know, a bot that wrote it up for you. Now, these are really good tools to use as well. JobScan can be used for your resume. It can also be used for your cover letter. So you can include your cover letter and a sample of a job description, for example, and that could be a good way for you to see how it kind of works in a like an applicant tracking system. What I'm doing is I'm getting I'm getting the URL so that you can have this and go to this. This is also a document that will talk about ChatGPT to generate a cover letter, and I think that's a good article to read. And then you can go back to the jobscan.co and you can use that for using it with your resume and a cover letter to see how it would survive those applicant tracking systems. And yes, another question that has come up in previous presentations is that the companies will use those applicant tracking systems to scan your cover letter. So that's another good reason to make sure you're including those keywords and specific qualifications. So they're both on your cover letter and your resume. That's perfectly fine because that match rate will increase and give you a better chance of advancing to the next stage of the process. LinkedIn is, whoops, LinkedIn is also a really good source to find information. What do the LinkedIn professionals say about cover letters and about using artificial intelligence to help you with that cover letter development? So another good article to read that I put in the chat for you to look at. Now, we're coming up to the end of our presentation. This is a quick tutorial of cover letters. And so the things to remember will be, how do I start it? What is that cover letter really about? And is there a difference between a cover letter and my resume? There is when it comes to style, but certainly when it comes to the theme of the documents. Your resume is basically tailored to the job that gives them kind of the background information of your qualifications, skill sets, education, and work history. And the bullet points in the work history that you only pick and choose the most relevant that relates to the next job you're applying to. A cover letter introduces yourself as a person, as an applicant to this particular job. You're answering the question, why you? Why should they consider you for the position? And you're trying to answer that question before they even ask it on a cover letter. And then why them? Why are you picking that particular company? Why do you think you might be qualified for that particular role? You're highlighting maybe some experiences and some specific areas that emphasize your qualifications. Now, I talked about the style. And again, for a cover letter, the style is a conversation, it's a narrative, if you will, in that conversation. So you want to use correct grammar. That business block style that I mentioned was a good, very professional looking way of doing your cover letter. You want to match the tone of the organization, so it needs to be professional in tone. That means not too casual. You don't want to use your life story. That might not be appropriate. That's there. So typically one page is perfectly fine. 3 paragraphs, I would say, would be a good number. I've really not seen anybody write a 5 paragraph cover letter. That might be too much to read. I have had cover letters be long, and I've had them be a page and a half, and then I go back and ask them kind of cut down some of the information, the details, to make it a good 1 page cover letter. I would say the fonts, when we're getting into the dynamics of this, the font would be the same as your resume. I would even also say that at the top of your resume and your cover letter, I would use the same format as your name, your contact information, so it looks like stationery. So on your resume, for example, if you have your name at the top, centered, then underneath you have your city, state, phone number, email, and LinkedIn URL on one line, separated by bullet points, little dots that separate those sections, with a line underneath it that gives a declination of kind of a separation that's there. It's a nice heading at the top of your document. Do the same thing for your cover letter. So if I had both of those and I printed them out and had them side by side, they look exactly the same. That's a really sharp beginning of really making a good first impression. So how do you stand out if other people are writing cover letters? How are you going to stand out for that? Well, you're going to stand out by making it look legible. It's tailored to the company. It has a professional tone, and it is, that top heading of your name and contact information is the same as your resume. That makes a really good first impression and helps you to stand out. You took extra care to do something like that. Now's the time for Q&A. So if you have a question, and you can bring yourself off mute if you want to do that, or you can simply write your question into the chat. I would be very glad to try to answer those questions. So anyone at all who would just type something into the chat box, and I'd be glad to answer. And remember, if you came in late, you will get a copy of this presentation. So don't worry about if you came in and missed some of it or all of it. You will get a copy if you registered. And that will be sent out as soon as we get everything rendered and transferred into a YouTube video. So those who might have just come in, we're obviously at the end of our presentation, but if you had a question about cover letters, or you wanted to ask maybe something, even though we covered it previously, if you have a specific question, you can put that in the chat and I'll be glad to answer that. All right, thank you. I'm glad that I'm getting folks that just enjoyed the presentation and gave some new tips. So good. If you have no questions, you're free to exit the presentation. And I do want to tell you, let me also, before you go, we do have a specific site for cover letters where you would be able to get 2 examples of the style of writing a cover letter. I'm going to get that for you right now. I'm going to put it in the chat, the address on where to find that information. And I put that in there too. Again, if you came in late, I just wanted to, if you're looking at the chat, those other links are to articles on using ChatGPT for helping you write a cover letter. That's perfectly legal and ethical. What you want to do is make sure that when you have a document that you had ChatGPT write for you, you want to go back into that document and edit it and make it your own. Put in your own personality, your own, how would you change it to make it more of a unique document that you wrote to some extent. So ChatGPT should only be used for kind of a launching off point to get some ideas in writing these documents. So I'm going to pause for a moment for any questions. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm glad that I hope that you got some information from this. I'm going to stop the recording.